那我们非常荣幸的请到了纽约大学比较文系系主任著名的批评理论家Jacques Lezra 教授来给我们做一次精彩的讲演。Let's give an introduction to our audience about you. 雅克莱斯拉教授是美国纽约大学比较文系系主任，知名的批评理论家，英德西班牙和葡萄牙语文学专家，主要的研究领域为比较文学、当代批判理论和政治哲学、欧洲早期现代性问题、翻译理论等等。他对卢克莱修、莎士比亚、塞万提斯、马克思、弗洛伊德、阿尔都塞、伍尔夫等人均有精深的研究。他的重要著作《野性的唯物主义》（White Materialism） 中译本已于2014年由北京大学出版社出版。莱兹拉教授另外著有Unspeakable Subjects，The Genealogy of the Events in Early Modern Europe， 编辑有Depositions, Althusser, Balibar, Lacheri, and the Labor of Reading， 还有这个Lucretius and Modernity, Epicurean Encounters Across Time and Disciplines 等书。还曾经他也是知名的翻译家，曾经与人合作将保罗·德曼，这是美国知名的解构主义理论家，将保罗·德曼的《盲视与洞见》翻译成西班牙文出版，荣获 PEM Critical Editions Award。莱兹拉教授即将出版的著作包括incoming books， 包括 Principles of Insufficient Reason、Mediation and Translation after Marx， 还有 On the Nature of Marx Things、Accidental Modernity，The Drama of Translation Between Spain and England、1499 to 1625 等等等等。那么这次雅克莱兹拉教授呢，在我们这个北京大学批评理论中心将会做3次的专门的这个专题的讲演。那么这3次的专门讲演呢，第一次就是今天晚上是关于这个 Marx's notion of objects， 那么后天我们是请他来给我们讲解Althusser's theory of reproduction， 阿尔都塞的再生产理论。然后这个星期五他还会给我们介绍有名的这个以法国哲学家梅亚苏为代表的这个所谓思辨实在论speculative realism， 给我们介绍这个最新的当今世界最比较新锐的这种哲学实在论运动，大家那个请一定不要错过。那么这3次讲演呢，它其实有一个主线呢就是所谓它的 New Materialism，connect to all your three lectures， 都是关于它的一个关于这个新唯物主义的构想，那么他也在写作有关的书，那么我们明天呢，请那个我们今天翻译王清先生给我们那个来做一次专题的讲演，就是关于日本思想家铃木行人的，他们都是从纽约大学过来的，所以我们这次一共是这个4次讲演，3次有莱特尔教授讲演，然后1次是王清先生来讲演，那个请大家有时间那个一定来参与啊。那么这个系列呢是我们这个北京大学国际批评理论中心的系列讲座之一，我们这个每个学期都会有几次讲演。那么这个学期第1次是有庄旭东老师也是在这里讲的。The first lecture this semester in our institute Center for Critical Theories by Professor Zhang Xudong about realism, real realism, about Jameson and others。另外呢，那个第2次讲演的这个学期是我们那个请的台湾的著名的小说家作家南博洲先生来我们这个中文系批评理论中心做了一次关于台湾文学的日据以来的台湾新文学运动，台湾新文学运动。那么这一周呢，我们请这个 莱斯拉教授和王清先生给我们来做4次精彩的讲演。然后我们下个月初呢，可能会有一次邀请澳大利亚的一个神学家，也是个批评理论家，叫罗兰波尔 ，Roland Bohr. We are going to invite another critical theorist, Roland Bohr, Australian theologist and critical theorist, Roland Bohr here for another talk about contradiction, theory of contradiction. Yeah. 所以我们这个学期的安排可能是会有这么多的一些学术活动，请大家尽量来参加。那么下学期我们会有更多的活动。那么今天我们就是非常荣幸的请到了雅克莱斯拉先生教授来跟我们做关于马克思的notion of objects。让我们以热烈的掌声欢迎他的讲演。
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and my honor to return to PKU for this series of 3 lectures in critical theory touching on the subject of dynamic objects. The scheme of these 3 talks is the following. Today I will start with a methodological introduction. I offer some thoughts on the terms before us, the terms matter, mediation, objects, and dynamism, referring in particular to Marx's works. I'll then propose a way of considering how Marx imagines, builds, and names objects. I'll be working with 2 passages in particular, from the introduction to the critique of political economy and from the unpublished chapter 6 of volume 1 of Capital. On Wednesday, I will continue my discussion of Marx, and I will center my comments on an essay by the French philosopher Louis Althusser titled in French Sur la reproduction des appareils de production, translated into English as On the Reproduction of Capital, a long work from which the very famous essay on ideology and ideological state apparatuses was excerpted and published in 1970. My last talk on Friday takes up the conceptualization of objects in the much more recent school of thought called New Materialism. New Materialism is a subfield of philosophical inquiry that lies at the point of intersection of ontology, logic, philosophy of mind, epistemology, and ethics. As you might expect, it is a rather incoherent sort of field, though that in itself is not a disabling, even an evaluative observation. New Materialism is most prominent in the Anglo-American philosophical and academic environment, though its most interesting philosophically consequential formulations are found in the work of the French philosopher Quentin Meillassoux. New Materialism is of particular interest to us today, here, in this small series of lectures on critical theory, because in its most careful shape, it represents a rejection of classic accounts of matter and a genuine and important critique of mediation, in the form of a critique of what Meillassoux calls correlationism. My last lecture, then, will outline the critique of mediation that we find in New Materialism, explain how Meillassoux' critique of correlationism works, and finally will suggest that this strong form of anti-correlationism fails in its critique of mediation as long as we understand mediation as Marx does, as a defective procedure for the materialization of objects and the objectification of matter. On my hypothesis, Marx's account of objects, of what they are, their composition, how they're produced and reproduced, how they escape what I call the ordinary language or commonsensical description of the priority of matter over object, and how they are assigned value and how, flows in 2 directions, quite incompatible between them. I will call these a nominalist and a realist direction. Marx's account of objects and of their names and of the sorts of objects that we call the names of objects is incoherent. This incoherence in the objects that Marx treats, in the names he gives those objects, and in the relation between name and object, this incoherence, which I am calling dynamism, is not a limitation of Marx's system, but a resource, its great resource. But why objects? That Marx is a philosopher of matter is in most ways self-evident. perhaps too much so. We believe that we know what matter is, and we believe we know what it is for Marx. Am I saying now, and instead, that Marx is not a materialist, or not principally a materialist? Am I claiming that Marx is foremost a philosopher of objects, of objectification and of reification, but also a philosopher of de-objectification and of subjection and subjectification? I'm saying the second as a way of better understanding the first claim, the notion, by now so overused, so flat, as to be nearly meaningless, that Marx is a philosopher of matter. There's a danger to this procedure. Whether we know or don't know what matter is or is for Marx, shifting attention to Marx's philosophy of objects may seem like a regressive tactic, as if the set of concepts aligned with matter or materialism had become outmoded or too tricky politically to handle. A conventional, more or less ordinary language expression would say, after all, that matter precedes the object, precedes it chronologically as well as logically, in being that out of which any object is constituted, the support of the object, its hypokomenon or subjectum, that which lies beneath, as the Greek and the Latin philosophical transitions have it. An object is cut out of that undifferentiated substrate or subjectum. It is and it obeys the first principle of differentiation. With the incision that makes the object something other than other things, matter acquires the first form that it was potentially to carry. A psychoanalytic analog. The infant at its mother's breast. At once, the flow of the mother's milk is interrupted, closed off. Now the mother stands objectively before the infant. She has said no. The fluid primary relation that the milk carries and constitutes is now at her will, as is the milk itself. No longer does the world stand in a pre-differential relation to the infant. The child is now also, as a result of the interruption of that indistinct flow, an I object in the world among other objects that it cannot master, over which it will have to exercise a subjective act of will, in which it will have to make incisions, recognizing itself as different from the mother object, from the milk that flowed between us, from the world of objects. With the violent emergence of the first object, the first number is counted. The first object, the first time anything can bear the description that it is one. The arrangement is now mathematically ordinal as well as cardinal. We are now in the world of objects that are or seem to be one. We are now, it would seem, able to ask in what order objects appear or can be made to line up out of the undifferentiated matter constituting them. First, second, third. A first event, the event of the emergence of the object from the subjectum. A second, the event of a subject's identifying that object as bearing one or another sort of value. A third, the event of that subject's setting into circulation for others the valued object, and so on. The matter is also cardinal. With the appearance of the object as one thing, we can now count the number of like objects and form classes of them. When we see what makes an object one, we can see what makes other objects like this one object, sufficiently alike to be brought under a different order of one concept, a commodity, a unit of abstract labor time. Say we set out to speak of Marx's objects. I'm doing so, I said, in an effort to reclaim Marx for materialism, for a radical materialism at work in his thought, a radical materialism that's been largely obscured, idealized, repressed, forgotten. We return to it through Marx's objects. And by the expression Marx's objects, we are referring in shorthand to a system of not entirely synonymous words. Objekt, Gegenstand, Ding, Sache. We'll be able to produce more or less concrete examples of this system. Tables, bales of wool, names, concepts, bodies, literary and historical figures, and so on. By considering them primarily as objects, we seem to take a step back from Marx's materialism. We seem to be operating in a secondary domain in which the mother's no has already rung out and cast the shadow of the object upon what the infant desires. We seem to be working in a world where value accrues to produced, formed, numerically distinct objects rather than to the stuff out of which they are produced. The world of objects is like the world of merchandise and commodities rather than like the disaggregated matter or stuff. It is the world of labor value rather than of laboring, of the event construed as act rather than as event, as what may arrive. Surely it is to the prior moments that Marx's philosophy, his ontology in particular, is first devoted, to the moment conditioning the world of consumption, to the world not yet world of material substance. That material ontology or ontology of matter is then followed by the analysis of the violent procedures, the cuts, incisions, prohibitions, and acts of production that wrest the objectality of the world out of its dumb materiality. Political economy is the world on which the shadow of the object has fallen. A material entity may appear for and to the realm of the senses, immediately, painfully, pleasurably, perceptibly. This or that thing may intrude upon our world, and this or that thing may be another person, or a state of affairs, or an animal. It will claim our attention, and whatever it is that claims our attention may be said to do so inasmuch as it is a material thing. But it is not yet, or so it would seem, an object. And strictly, whatever it intrudes upon is not yet my world. Material things become objects when we, or I, can say about them, that material thing there, which I designate or name, that thing there intrudes upon my world. It, or another, my mother, for example, says, no, that material thing, or this material thing that I am, has this edge. It stands here. It can be taken from you. At this moment, a material thing becomes an object. And reflexively, I, who designate that material thing, become the subject of my world, and my world becomes mine. I told you this story just now in the lexicon of psychoanalysis. My mother was the primary actor. The milk that she denies me is the first figure of an incision of subjectification and of objectification. The small logical and chronological circle that is thus formed, however, is also a disciplinary circle, the circle of disciplinarity itself. An object becomes such on the designation of an I or of a set of protocols for understanding, that is, of a discipline who take account of it. But that I or that discipline becomes an object for itself and becomes coherent as a set of protocols, that is, I become a subject and a discipline becomes a discipline only inasmuch as they are the subject of the designation. Allow me then to start over, offering a different gloss on the terms that are at the heart of these three lectures: the concept of dynamism, the notion of object, and their relation. The expression dynamic objects, and I'm not sure how my friend Wang Qin will translate the expression into Chinese. Well, you'll tell me later. This expression, dynamic objects, is likely to prove difficult on its face. I take it from the American pragmatist philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce, who in a letter of 1904 defines a special class of signs which he calls indices like this. I define an index as a sign determined by its dynamic object by virtue of being in a real relation to it. Such is a proper name. A dynamic object in this specific sense determines the indexical sign that designates it by virtue of a real relation that it possesses to the sign.